During my divorce, my ex-wife and her lawyer boyfriend left me with nothing. They took away our 3 homes, all the cars, $8 million in assets, and somehow, even custody of my grown children. "Looks like you lost," she sneered, and that gloating expression is etched forever in my memory. At 70 years old, I was left broke, humiliated, and alone, trying to survive on the street. One day, out of options, I decided to close an ancient savings account that belonged to my grandfather Frederick. I figured there might be $50 in it if I was lucky. When the bank manager checked the records, his complexion turned ghostly. "Sir, this account has been gaining interest since 1948, he mentioned, showing me the statement on his screen. What I saw was beyond anything I'd imagined. But before we jump into what I found in that account, you have to understand who I was, the life I built piece by piece, what I held dear, and what they snatched from me. Then you'll see why the account wasn't just money. It was cosmic justice served on a silver platter. I'm Elijah. Folks tend to call me Eli. At 70, I've spent over 4 decades crafting my empire from nothing. I started by pounding the pavement in Los Angeles, selling insurance door to door in the relentless sun. In a borrowed suit and shoes that didn't fit, I walked 12 miles a day, knocking on countless doors, hearing no repeatedly. But then I got my first yes. That one person who believed in me was invaluable. I saved everything I earned for 5 whole years until I could open my own agency. Real estate followed. I invested in neighborhoods everyone else overlooked. Where others saw dilapidation, I saw potential and worked wonders. By the time I hit 50, I had 3 stunning properties in prime California locations. I drove a shiny black Mercedes-Benz and had more money than my father could have dreamed of. But my real wins weren't the houses or the cars. It was my family. When I was 35, I married Camilla. She was breathtaking. Her green eyes seemed to see right through you, and her laughter could fill a room with joy. We met while I was trying to impress a big client at dinner, and I clumsily knocked over a glass of red wine. Everyone tensed, but she laughed. It was a beautiful sound, and said, "Finally, someone's brave enough to make a mess of something perfect." From then on, I knew she was the one. We had Brianna first, with her mom's eyes and my stubborn grit, and then Marcus, a quiet thinker with a kind heart. I watched them blossom, drove them to school, cheered at sports events, and went to every recital. I funded their studies at top universities and taught them the importance of integrity over wealth. When Marcus became a lawyer and Brianna a doctor, pride filled my heart. My life seemed complete. Every effort and late night at work had paid off. Camilla and I marked 35 years together, sharing a home, mornings, dreams, so I thought. Then about 2 years back, things began to change subtly. Little things at first. Camilla would come home late, citing meetings with her lawyer about some distant relative's inheritance. "It's complicated, Eli," she'd explain, her attention buried in her phone. "Ethan claims it could really drag on." Ethan, her lawyer, was mid-40s, hair too slick, dressed far too sharp, and had a smile as fake as a used car dealer's pitch. I met Ethan during a dinner, his handshake too strong, calling me friend too much. Something wasn't right with him, but Camilla insisted he was best in the field. Their meetings grew more frequent, twice a week, then up to almost every day. She began to dress up more, donning perfumes and outfits I'd never seen. Questioning her got me a laugh and a dismissive, "Oh, Eli, are you getting paranoid? Can't a woman just like to dress nicely?" I wanted so badly to believe her. After more than 3 decades together, it felt impossible that she'd lie. I trusted in the love we shared. But love can blind you, leaving you unaware of what's really happening. One night, I arrived home earlier than planned. She wasn't expecting me until 9 p.m. I had cut my day short, deciding to surprise her with an impromptu dinner at her favorite restaurant. As soon as I entered the house and tossed my keys on the table by the door, the familiar jingle echoed around. From the study, I heard a laugh I knew all too well, Camilla's. But this time, it carried a different weight, one laced with secrecy. I crept closer and overheard her on the phone. "He has no idea," she said with a hint of satisfaction. "He's just this clueless old man, his head always buried in work. By the time he figures it out, it'll all be ours." A pause, then more laughter, sweet and tender. "I love you, Ethan. Just a bit more patience, and it's ours." Time froze. My heart felt like it skipped a beat, and I was stuck in a moment that seemed to last forever. I wanted to storm in there, demand explanations, scream. But something stopped me from moving. Maybe it was a survival instinct, or maybe it was pure fear of facing the nightmare that had just unfolded in my ears. So instead, I backed out quietly, left the house, and drove aimlessly for hours. The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. I couldn't wrap my head around it. 35 years of building a life with the woman who was now plotting to strip everything away. That night, I ended up at a shabby motel. Returning home didn't feel possible. Confronting her with this new, painful knowledge wasn't something I could bear. The next day, I reached out to a private investigator. It wasn't cheap, but uncovering the truth was a necessity. I had to understand the full extent of this betrayal, see just how deep it went. After 3 grueling weeks, the investigation results came in. There were photos of Camilla and Ethan slipping into hotels. Phone records showed hours of calls. Emails laid out their plans to take everything from me. Using his legal acumen, Ethan was fixing things so I'd look like the bad guy. And Camilla, my wife and the mother of our kids, was supplying him with every detail about our finances and assets. On a Monday morning, I confronted Camilla. As she nonchalantly drank her coffee, I spread the photos before her. Her face went pale for a split second, but then she smiled a smile I'd never seen before. Sinister, calculating. "Well, Eli, what's your next move? Divorce? Go ahead. Ethan's way ahead of you on that front." She was brutally honest. I'd been snared in a trap before I even realized it. Squaring off against the city's top lawyer when I was a 70-year-old man who believed in justice? I didn't stand a chance. Just 3 days after our showdown, the divorce proceedings began. The same day, Camilla packed her things and walked out of the house, playing the part of the wounded spouse. Neighbors watched her leave, tears streaking her face, perfectly embodying the role of a deserted wife. I stayed in that big, empty house, every corner echoing with the ghost of my family. The walls seemed almost accusatory. The smiles from old photos now felt like taunts. Yet, losing Camilla wasn't the worst. What followed was far more devastating. Ethan pounced like a predator hunting down its prey. Within a week, the divorce papers arrived, and their contents were a bombshell. Camilla accused me of emotional torment, of twisting her finances for years, painting a picture of a controlling tyrant. She claimed I coerced her into signing papers she hadn't read, that I'd threatened her, making her life miserable. Each line was a carefully crafted lie, each charge aiming to wreck my name. Worse, she had people backing those claims, folks I counted as friends, business associates, even our housekeeper of 15 years. They all aligned with her story, lying so smoothly it left me chilled. I hired a seasoned lawyer, an old-timer with 50 years under his belt, who assured me, confident that truth would win out. "Don't worry, Mr. Hawthorne," he said, patting my shoulder. "We've got plenty of evidence of your honesty and hard work. No judge will side with a woman blatantly fabricating lies like her." But my lawyer missed one critical piece. Ethan didn't play fair. He navigated the legal field like it was his own playground, knowing every twist and influence. He knew just where to squeeze, when, and how. I was there early for our first day in court, dressed to the nines in a suit that screamed, "I'm the good guy here." I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, justice would lean in my favor. While I waited, Camilla showed up, her arm looped through Ethan's like she was walking down some celebrity red carpet. She was all in black, with sunglasses that said, "I'm in mourning." She seemed so fragile, like she could crumble any second. Meanwhile, I was exactly how she wanted everyone to see me, like the rich and intimidating guy who could easily be painted as the villain who mistreated his wife out of the public eye. The judge was this stern woman in her 50s, giving off vibes as unreadable as a poker player on a hot streak. She kicked things off by listening to Camilla's version first. And Ethan really went all out for about 40 minutes, painting me as some sort of nightmare. According to him, our nights were filled with me yelling and me supposedly deciding our finances, isolating Camilla, making her feel insignificant. When I got my turn, my lawyer showed our side. Happy vacation photos, neighbors testifying they never heard a thing, bank records proving Camilla had control over our money. But Ethan? He was ready for everything. "Those photos? All staged, Your Honor," he shot back. My client just smiled because she had to. The neighbors didn't hear anything because, according to him, the abuse was psychological, not physical. Sure, the money was there, but only if she asked me for it. Ethan's story had a slickness that was hard to deny, well rehearsed and convincing. I could tell the judge wasn't completely buying my side. She closed the session without making a decision, saying she needed more time to mull over everything before setting another date. Walking out of the courthouse felt like everything was crumbling beneath my feet. My lawyer tried to calm me down with, "These things take time." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was really off. It gnawed at me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Just lay there staring up, wondering how my life seemed to flip from perfect to a complete mess. The weeks that followed turned into a tangled web of legal headaches. More hearings, more lies, and more supposedly eyewitnesses saying they saw my aggressive side. Ethan even rolled out this psychologist who said Camilla had PTSD from years of so-called abuse, complete with fake medical records of doctor visits for anxiety and depression. Every bit of evidence was twisted beyond recognition. And there I was, watching it all implode within weeks, what I'd spent years building up. But the real kicker? Ethan coming after the assets. He didn't just want to split things. He was going for the whole shebang. All 3 houses? Yep, all of them, arguing I bought them to keep her under my thumb. The cars, too, because she needed reliable transport after my alleged trauma. And then the accounts, claiming I squirreled away $8 million over our 35-year marriage. He wanted everything. My lawyer said it was nonsense, that no judge would go for it, but turns out he wasn't thinking like Ethan. Ethan had a wild card we never saw coming. In the next hearing, Ethan rocked up with documents supposedly showing I diverted company money into personal stashes, dodging taxes for years. The papers had my signature, official-looking stamps, but they were as new to me as anyone else. These forgeries were so spot on, they even made my lawyer question everything. "Eli," he said to me behind closed doors, "is there something you're not telling me? If these papers hold up, we're in deep." I told him under no uncertain terms. I had always played by the rules. Taxes were paid, business funds all accounted for. But Ethan had orchestrated this con with precision. The fake papers were so legit-looking, the judge ordered a deep dive into all my finances. For 3 exhausting months, auditors went over every past transaction, receipt, every bank move. They turned up zilch illegal, but the damage was done. Headlines popped up about the businessman caught in fraud and abuse allegations. Clients walked away. Business partners weren't taking my calls. The name that used to get things moving was now a door-slam soundbite. But the real blow? Brianna and Marcus, my kids, the ones who mean everything to me, sided with their mom. She had gotten them to believe all the lies. She let them believe I was a distant, controlling father who she'd suffered through for their sake. And they bought it. Well, maybe they didn't truly buy it, but money has a way of speaking louder than family bonds. Camilla waved the promise of inheritance in front of them if they testified in her favor. They played along. My daughter, who went through medical school with my funding, took the stand confidently, painting me as emotionally vacant and never showing genuine love. My son, the lawyer with courtroom know-how, insisted he'd seen signs of my controlling nature throughout his childhood. Their words cut deep, piercing with betrayal like sharp knives. The final hearing took place on a dreary Friday in November. Dark clouds loomed as if nature itself sensed the gravity of the day. The courtroom was packed. Camilla and Ethan sat across from me, failing to mask their smug expectancy. Up front were my kids, unable to meet my gaze. My lawyer sat beside me, clutching a sadly thin folder dwarfed by the hefty stack of papers Ethan had assembled. When the judge entered, we all rose. She took her seat and began reading the verdict in a monotonous voice, void of emotion. Going over all the evidence presented, the judge ruled that Camilla would be awarded all marital assets due to proven emotional and financial abuse. The announcement felt like a sucker punch. All 3 properties would be transferred to her. I could feel my breath catch. Cars, bank balances, assets totaling about $8 million remaining with her. My hands started to tremble. What's this talk about custody of minors when Brianna and Marcus are grown? Excuse me? Oh, it's a suggestion that the adult children maintain distance from me until completing mandatory psychological counseling. The judge's voice continued, but a high-pitched ringing blocked out her words. My lawyer tried offering comfort with a pat on the shoulder. I shrugged it off, wanting no comfort nor pity. I just wished for the nightmare to be over. When the judge concluded with a strike of the gavel, it resonated like a gunshot in the room. Court was adjourned. It was over. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and striving to live a good life wiped away by a judge's decision, without knowing the true story. I remained seated as everyone else stood up. I watched Camilla leave with Ethan, arm linked with his. As they neared the exit, she glanced back and smirked. Not a subtle smirk, a broad, triumphant smirk filled with spite. Ethan whispered something to her, making her laugh. That laughter cut the silence like a knife. It dawned on me it was never about love or pain. It was all about the money. I was merely her ATM, waiting to be shut down for good. My kids trailed behind them, avoiding my eyes. Brianna hurried out, head low, like she was ashamed, though not enough to stay. Marcus spared me a brief glance. Was it guilt, discomfort perhaps? But neither approached. No words were said. In minutes, everyone cleared out, leaving me rooted to my rigid wooden chair. My lawyer finally leaned in and murmured, "Eli, I'm truly sorry. We can file an appeal. We can—" I interrupted with a hand gesture. There was nothing left to contest. Ethan and Camilla had won. My loss was total. I left the courthouse more like a ghost than a man. Outside, the sun was shining bright. People went about their day, chatting and laughing, blissfully unaware my world had just collapsed. I found a bench in front of the building, focusing on just breathing. Inhale, exhale. I tried to make sense of what happened, but my mind resisted it. How did I lose 3 homes, my nest egg, my cars, even my kids' respect, all in one day? How did 35 years of marriage end with my wife taking it all, backed by the legal system? The next few days came at me like a whirlwind full of meetings with lawyers, endless piles of documents, and an overwhelming wave of humiliation. I had less than a week to clear out of the house we once shared. Camilla was eager to move in with Ethan, transforming what used to be my home into their personal paradise. I packed up my life into musty-smelling cardboard boxes. Imagine, 40 years of memories condensed into just a dozen boxes. There were clothes, a handful of books, and photos I couldn't bring myself to look at, yet couldn't discard either. Everything else, furniture, art pieces, the memories, was left behind. It was all hers now. On my last day there, I made a point not to look back. I couldn't. I knew if I allowed myself one last glance at that house, I might crumble right there on the spot. I moved into a run-down apartment in the rougher part of town, a cramped one-bedroom with paper-thin walls where you could clearly hear the neighbors arguing every night. The bathroom had mold creeping across the corners, and the kitchen was so tiny that fitting in more than one person was a challenge. But that was all my budget could stretch to. Losing $8 million in the divorce also meant losing every bit of financial trust. No more credit, no more loans, no support whatsoever. The banks wanted nothing to do with me. "We're sorry, Mr. Hawthorne," they'd say, leaving words unspoken but understood. I was now a liability. Slowly, friends I once counted on began to disappear, one by one. At first, they'd send me messages expressing pity about my situation, but when I reached out seeking help, either looking for a job or simply a friendly ear, the excuses came in full swing. "I'm too busy, Eli. It's really not a good time. Camilla is quite close to my wife, you understand how it is." Within a couple of months, my phone contacts dwindled to almost none. People I'd shared dinners, vacations, and business endeavors with effectively erased me from their lives. That's how it goes when you hit rock bottom. Nobody wants to risk getting any of it on themselves. I tried reaching out to my kids constantly. Brianna never picked up, her line always forwarded to voicemail. At first, I left messages, pleading for her to hear my side of the story, but after 20 messages went answered, I gave up. Marcus did answer once. His tone was cold and distant. "Dad, we know everything from Mom," he said. "She told us about your manipulation, how you made her feel worthless." I tried to explain it was false, that Camilla and Ethan had plotted this. He sighed and replied, "That's just what a manipulator would say," before disconnecting. He never took another call from me again. The nights were the worst. I'd sit in my dismal apartment, the noise of distant sirens and neighbors' arguments as company, wondering how my life had flipped so drastically. At 70, after a lifetime of hard work and sensible decisions, I was left utterly alone. No family, no friends, no money, nothing to aim for. Sometimes I thought about just accepting it, giving up the fight, accepting that there was no way to climb back up. But some mix of stubborn pride or just sheer will kept me from fully letting go. I searched for work, but nobody was in a rush to hire a 70-year-old with a fresh legal scandal under his belt. "You're overqualified," they'd say, or "We're looking for someone younger," essentially meaning you're too old, too much trouble, and too much of a gamble. So I scraped by with odd jobs, fixing things in neighbors' houses, helping people move. One weekend, I painted an entire house for $200. I, who used to close million-dollar deals, was now earning pennies from labor that broke my back. But I needed food on the table and rent money for the apartment I reluctantly called home. 3 months after the divorce, while wandering downtown, I caught sight of Camilla and Ethan. They were stepping out of a swanky restaurant, the kind of place we used to celebrate anniversaries in. Camilla wore an elegant red dress I'd never seen, sparkling with jewels catching the sun. Ethan had his arm around her like a prize, and they both looked so happy, living the high life off my money, in the homes I lost, driving the cars I once owned. I hid behind a lamppost, not out of fear, but because I couldn't bear them seeing what I had become. A man broken, defeated. That night, it felt like I'd hit rock bottom. I sat on the floor of my apartment. Sitting amidst a pile of bills I had no way of paying, I just broke down and cried my heart out, like I hadn't done since childhood. Frustration and hopelessness brought tears cascading down my face. I kept wondering why I bothered working so hard, only to end up alone and broke, while those who backstabbed me were benefiting from my efforts. It felt unbearably unfair. That night, I came to a realization. Justice is something you have to pursue on your own. It won't just fall into your lap. The morning after my emotional meltdown, as I was trying to organize the few possessions I had left, I stumbled upon an old box buried in the closet. It belonged to my grandpa Frederick, who had passed away when I was 20. It contained old papers, some faded photos, and a notebook filled with his thoughts. I hadn't looked at it in ages, and it had the musty smell of old paper. Among those things was a photo from my grandparents' wedding. They looked so young and full of hope. But the item that caught my attention was one I'd forgotten about, a small, faded green bank passbook with worn edges. Curiously, I opened it. Turned out it was a savings account from First National Trust, set up by my grandpa in 1948. Written in faded blue ink were numbers showing the last deposit, $50 made in 1952. After that, nothing. For over 70 years, the account lay forgotten. I thought it was probably closed or inactive, but in my miserable state, curiosity sparked. What if this account was still out there? Even if it just held those $50, it could get me through a week's groceries. I figured I had nothing to lose by checking it out. First National Trust was still around, but now it was a part of a bigger chain. The closest branch was a bus ride away, about 40 minutes. I threw on the only suit I owned, the one I wore to my last court hearing, now wrinkled with a stubborn coffee stain. With the passbook in hand, I set off early. The bus was crowded with weary folks heading to jobs they disliked. I made it to the bank right at 9 a.m. The place was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, nothing like the old-style banks I remembered. I clutched the passbook tightly as I walked in, my palms sweaty. The receptionist gave me a practiced smile, asking how she might help, clearly not expecting anything significant. Handing her the passbook, I said I wanted to check if the account was still open. She looked puzzled, examined it, and asked me to wait. I sank into one of those notoriously uncomfortable chairs, surrounded by people busy with important matters, while I was chasing a ghost from 1948. Minutes dragged by, 20, then 30, and my confidence wavered, wondering if I was wasting my time. Then a man in his late 60s appeared, wearing thick glasses and a gray suit. "Mr. Hawthorne," he called out. I stood and said, "Yes." He introduced himself as Joseph, the branch manager, and asked me to step into his office. His tone made me uneasy, like I'd brought up something unexpected. Following him down a corridor with gleaming marble floors, we walked in silence until we reached his office. He shut the door and gestured for me to sit. At his computer, he began typing, a tense look on his face. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said without looking up, "do you have any ID to prove you're related to Frederick Hawthorne?" I handed over my ID, noting that Hawthorne was my last name and Frederick was my grandpa from my father's side. He checked my IDs, glanced at the screen, and took a deep breath. "Sir, this account is still open. It's been collecting compound interest since 1948. Time seemed to stop. "What?" I whispered. He turned the screen toward me, and there it was, the account balance. I read the numbers repeatedly, struggling to comprehend it. This just couldn't be real. It was impossible. The amount was in the millions. The room felt like it was spinning, and I struggled to breathe. "That can't be right," I stuttered. Joseph nodded slowly, explaining he had triple-checked the information. My grandpa's $50 deposit from 1948 had never been touched. For 77 years, this bank account has just been sitting there, quietly growing. Thanks to the original bank rate and all the changes over the years, the amount ballooned out of control. I was stunned, absolutely speechless. I mean, imagine hearing that you've got $127 million just chilling in some forgotten account. Meanwhile, this small green slip of paper was just gathering dust in a box while I was out there hustling, building, and literally creating an entire empire from scratch. And the whole time, this insane sum was just waiting for the right moment. But that's not all, Joseph interrupted my thoughts. He got up, dug through a filing cabinet in the corner of his office, and came back with a yellowed folder. Inside, there was a sealed envelope. It was tied to the account. Instructions straight from your grandfather. It was meant for the first person who would withdraw from that account. Holding that envelope felt surreal. It was sealed with red wax, like something out of an old novel. My name was on the front in my grandfather's elegant handwriting. Elijah Hawthorne, open this when you truly need it. Breaking that seal felt like cracking open a mystery. Inside was a letter on really nice paper. The ink was faded but still readable. As I started to read, tears slipped down my cheeks before I could even stop them. Dear Elijah, by now you've discovered what I left behind. If you've found it, you must need it. I've been through betrayal at the hands of those I trusted. It happened in 1945 with my business partner. He took my business, my savings, tried to take your grandmother too. The whole thing nearly broke me. But I figured out something important. They can take everything they see, but not what's hidden from view. The letter continued, saying, in 1948, I secretly put my last $50 in this account. It was all I had, but it wasn't meant for me. It was for you, for my future grandson, who wasn't there yet but I knew would come someday. I hoped time and interest would do their thing. I believed that when you needed it, this account would be ready for you. Real wealth isn't about showing off. It's about having something for life's toughest moments. Elijah, if you're reading this and you're hurt, remember, betrayal cuts deep because love meant a lot. But that same love, while painful, also makes us strong. Don't let anger consume you. Use these funds to rebuild, never for revenge. Transform your pain into strength, not bitterness. And keep in mind, those who turned against you have already lost. They've lost someone honest. No amount of money can replace that. The letter ended with a line that truly got to me. Become what I always hoped you'd be. Be what I couldn't. I loved you even before you existed. Your grandfather, Frederick. I folded the letter and held it close, tears falling freely. Joseph respectfully looked away, giving me space to take it all in. It was like Grandpa had seen it all coming. Like he knew I'd face betrayal and set this up for when I needed it most. Joseph waited until I was collected. He offered me a tissue and some water. Mr. Hawthorne, he said, we're going to need to go through some paperwork to transfer the money into an active account under your name. This much money will take some time to sort out. I also advise seeing a financial advisor and probably an attorney for the legal side of things. Hearing about an attorney made me grin a bit. I was tired of them, but Joseph was right. I had to guard this fortune from people like Camilla and Ethan. Can we keep this under wraps? I asked. Joseph reassured me. Definitely. Banking regulations are strict. Unless you tell someone, no one knows about this account. And I'd hold off on sharing until you've got your legal protections in place. Those were the words I needed. Because right then, holding my grandfather's letter and the account statement that could change my life, something inside me clicked. This wasn't just a restart. It was my chance to set things straight. I walked out of the bank 3 hours later. I had a folder full of documents in my arms and a secret heavier than the biggest treasure chest. A jaw-dropping $127 million. That number kept spinning in my head like a whirlwind. I was drifting through the city streets, deep in thought, trying to make sense of my crazy situation. As people bustled around me, No one seemed to notice that the slightly scruffy older guy in a rumpled suit striding near them had just hit it big. I'm talking mega-millionaire status overnight. It was surreal. Just a day ago, I was stressing about how I'd pay next month's rent. Now, I had more money than I'd need if I lived a dozen lifetimes. But instead of feeling ecstatic or going on a wild spending spree, I was filled with something else. Something unexpected. Clarity. For the first time in ages, my mind was sharp as a tack. Right then, I realized exactly what needed to happen. Camilla and Ethan thought they'd stripped me bare, assuming I had nothing left to lose. How wrong they were. I was about to show them how expensive it is to underestimate a man who's hit rock bottom and finds treasure in the abyss. My first move? Change where I lived. I wasn't going to some flashy mansion or ritzy high-rise. Too obvious. Instead, I chose a nice, simple crib in a quiet area. Just a two-bedroom with a lot of sunlight, nothing to raise any eyebrows. I bought modest furniture, wore everyday clothes, and kept driving my beat-up car. You know, my grandpa once told me a truth that stuck. Real wealth is unseen. I had to keep everything low-key while I planned my next steps. So, a lawyer was a must, but not just any lawyer. After weeks of research, I landed on the perfect guy for legal fraud and misconduct. Robert Bob Kingsley. The guy was a legend, with an unblemished record and a 92% win rate against dodgy lawyers. Sure, his rate wasn't cheap at $500 an hour, but I could handle that now. When we met in his straightforward office, adorned with degrees and awards, I laid it all out, every shady detail of the divorce, the lies, and forged docs. Robert listened intently, taking notes, and then let out a serious nod. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said, "this is a classic case of legal malpractice and potential fraud. If we demonstrate that attorney Ethan Vance doctored documents and skewed the legal process, we might overturn the divorce and even pursue criminal charges against him." All I wanted now was a nod. Exactly. But it's got to be stealthy until I'm ready to strike. I pushed. Robert gave a slight grin. "Absolutely. And actually, I've got some contacts to help us out." In the weeks that followed, Robert launched a stealthy but relentless mission. He roped in a top-notch private investigator, someone who could discreetly uncover the truth. The investigator kicked off the mission by shadowing Ethan, revisiting old cases, and chatting with past clients. And what he discovered was pure dynamite. I wasn't Ethan's only target. Over the last 10 years, he pulled similar stunts on at least 7 other divorce cases. Same shady methods, fake docs, bribed testimonies, bogus evidence. He always slithered out unscathed because his victims were too defeated and broke to retaliate. But we had the resources and, crucially, the time. The investigator began gathering stories from those victims. Once they realized Ethan was getting challenged, some were ready to spill the beans. Others were hesitant but slowly warmed up with assurances of protection. We dug up dirt on Camilla, too. It turns out she'd been in on the con with Ethan for over 3 years. We unearthed emails, texts, call records, all from servers they thought were safely locked away. Our investigator was brilliant, almost too much so. He illegally accessed documents showing questionable money trails, secret get-togethers, even photos of the two cozying up long before I got suspicious. The mountain of evidence grew, but Robert advised patience. "Let's make sure this case is airtight. If we move too soon, Ethan might destroy evidence or flee." We had to wait until everything was perfectly set before making any moves, so I hung back for a while. During that waiting period, I decided to focus on something really important: repairing my relationship with my kids. But I didn't go for the usual approach. I didn't start by calling them with apologies or try to win them over with gifts. Instead, I took a different route and got a private investigator to look into what was happening in their lives. This way, I discovered that Brianna was in a tight spot at work. Her boss was hassling her, and she felt like if she spoke up, it might mess with her career. Marcus, on another note, dumped his money into a business deal that was sinking fast, and he was neck-deep in debt. As for Camilla, she was no help to her siblings. She was too busy living it up with Ethan, spending my money. So, I figured I'd lend a hand to my kids without them having a clue it was me. Through some legal go-betweens, I managed to get Brianna's sleazy boss investigated and kicked out. It wasn't hard, considering he had a sketchy past of bothering people that had somehow stayed hidden at the company. Marcus's dilemma required a more intricate solution. His business was gasping for a lifeline to survive. I formed a shell company and injected money into his business, pretending to be an unknown investor. Marcus never suspected that the mystery person who bailed out his business was actually his own dad. The investigator kept me filled in on how they were reacting. Brianna was a mix of relieved and curious about her sudden good fortune. Marcus was grateful, but couldn't quite shake the odd feeling about someone betting on his small business. Still, neither had a hint it was me. Flash forward 6 months, half a year of working quietly from the shadows, building my case and quietly lending my kids a hand. During that time, I watched Camilla and Ethan bask in their so-called victory. They'd taken over my prime property, the mansion with the unbeatable ocean view. They were living it up, throwing lavish parties, jet-setting across Europe, and plastering their flashy lifestyle all over social media. Every boastful post, every fake smile, each display of their ill-gotten gains only fueled my resolve. Then, Robert called me to his office one day. "We're all set," he said with a grin that spoke louder than words. He laid a bulky folder on his desk. "We've collected enough evidence to hit Ethan with charges of fraud, document forgery, and malpractice in 8 cases, including the one against you. Plus, we had dirt on Camilla too, showing she was knee-deep in the plot against me, making her open to criminal charges." I flipped open the folder to see the mountain of evidence. Emails between Ethan and Camilla plotting against me, witness statements about being bribed to spread lies, and forensic proof that signatures on documents Ethan submitted were manipulated. "So, what's our plan?" I asked. Robert leaned back in his chair. "We take this straight to the district attorney. This kind of evidence will force them to issue arrest warrants. Plus, we'll file a motion to void the divorce due to fraud. The judge will have to hear it. And once that goes through, everything you lost comes back." For the first time in close to a year, a genuine smile crept across my face, a smile full of real satisfaction. "How long do you think it'll all take?" I wondered. Robert took a glance at his calendar. "If we move fast, we could see arrest warrants issued in 2 weeks. The divorce annulment hearing should come up in about a month." "All right, let's get this rolling," I said. And with that, the final act was underway. By Monday morning, Robert had delivered all the incriminating evidence to the district attorney's office. Come Wednesday, the DA had pored over the files and was shocked by the level of crookedness uncovered. "This might be the most serious case of malpractice I've ever dealt with," he told Robert. "We're not wasting any time. We're going straight to criminal charges." By Friday, the arrest warrants were ready, but Robert and I decided to wait for the perfect moment to act. That night, Camilla and Ethan were throwing a massive party to celebrate their first anniversary. They'd invited 100 of the city's most highbrow folks, treating them to bottles of fine champagne and gourmet treats. While completely oblivious, they were unknowingly dancing on the ruins of my past. The party finally came around, and the night sky was clear, speckled with stars. Of course, I wasn't on the guest list, but I had eyes and ears everywhere. The investigator had planted his people within the catering company working the event. They fed me updates on the hour. Camilla waltzed in wearing a spotless white dress, which was amusing given what was about to unfold. Ethan strolled about in his sharp tux, looking way too smug, like he'd just snagged a secret treat and thought no one noticed. People showed up in their flashy rides, clueless that the celebration was happening in a house built on lies and phony documents. By 9 p.m., the party was buzzing, champagne glasses clinking and music filling the air. That's when 3 unmarked black cars pulled up to the entrance. Federal agents and local cops got out, armed with warrants. The investigator called me up. "They're moving in now," he said. I could still catch sounds of the party, laughter, tunes, and then, bang, silence. "Ethan Vance is under arrest for fraud, faking documents, and conspiracy." The investigator's voice was steady and direct. "Camilla Rohr is under arrest too, for helping and abetting fraud and plotting procedural fraud." He painted the scene for me. Camilla dropped her champagne, the glass shattering loudly on the marble floor, echoing in the sudden quiet. Ethan tried to play lawyer, spouting legal talk to scare off the officers, but it was worthless. The orders were clear, the evidence bulletproof. They cuffed them right there, in front of nearly 100 stunned guests. People grabbed their phones, recording every moment. By morning, the clips had flooded social media, an absolute public humiliation. I asked about Camilla. "How's she doing?" The investigator paused for a bit. "She's in a bad state, crying, worried about her kids, claiming it's all a setup." That tiny sliver of me, the part that had a soft spot for her after all those 35 years, felt a hint of sympathy. But it was small. Mostly, I felt a cool detachment, justice finally prevailing. "Thanks for the details," I said, ending the call. That night, back in my cozy apartment, I sat with a steaming cup of tea, thinking it all over. I didn't feel like throwing a party. I just felt a deep sense of calm, the kind you get when you witness the universe, slow as it usually is, setting things right. My grandpa was on to something. As for those who wronged me, they were doomed long before the arrests happened, because they tossed aside their principles and lost the ability to face themselves without shame. The next day, the news was ablaze. Prominent lawyer caught tangled in a web of lies. The articles detailed years of deceit, shattered lives, and crushed aspirations. My case got mentioned as one of the worst. Online, people were fierce. Those who once looked up to Ethan turned into his biggest critics. Camilla was dubbed his sly partner. Folks who had sipped champagne at their party were now livid online, conveniently forgetting they had been toasting in a house bought with deceit. Robert rang me up later on to update me. "The divorce will be officially sorted out in 3 weeks. With all the arrests and evidence, there's no doubt it'll work out in my favor." "You're going to get everything back," he assured me before we said our goodbyes. But honestly, my possessions were the least of my worries. Fixing things with my kids was what truly mattered. That very evening, Brianna called after almost a year of silence. She was in tears, saying, "Dad, I saw what happened. I had no idea. Mom told us so much nonsense and we bought it." Her voice wavered as she spoke. I didn't interrupt, just letting her experience it all in her own time. Once she recomposed herself, I softly explained, "Brianna, your mom's lies fooled you just as much as they did me. I can't fault you for that. You simply wanted to trust her. In your place, I'd have done the same." She cried even harder. "We were terrible to you. You needed us, and we weren't there. How could you ever forgive that?" I closed my eyes for a second, then answered, "Because I love you. Real love forgives, even when it hurts. Still, you need to know, although you're forgiven, rebuilding doesn't happen overnight. We'll take it slow, start over, and build those bridges again." Later, Marcus called, sounding less emotional than Brianna, but there was a mix of awkwardness and newfound respect in his voice. "Dad, was it you who saved my company, the anonymous investor?" I dodged the question a bit. "Does it really matter?" He paused. "Yeah, it does. Even when we abandoned you when you were at your lowest, you still looked out for us, didn't expect a thing back, just like a real dad." His voice cracked with emotion. "I'm sorry, Dad. Truly. I told them we'd get together soon and sort through everything, but right now, I needed focus on healing myself. They understood, or at least they claimed to. Only time would reveal if they genuinely meant it." The court date to nullify the divorce arrived quicker than I had expected. I walked into the same courtroom where things fell to pieces a year ago, but this time felt different. I wore a sharp new suit, with Robert by my side, clutching a mountain of evidence. The judge was new, an older woman appearing wise and experienced. She analyzed all the details with care. Camilla and Ethan were absent, still detained and waiting on their trial. Their lawyers looked defeated right from the start. Robert presented everything: fake documents countered by forensic reports, bribed witnesses coming clean, emails between Camilla and Ethan laying out their plan, and testimonies from Ethan's past victims describing similar scams. The judge listened attentively, her expression growing more severe with each revelation. When Robert finished, she removed her glasses and turned to us. In her 3 decades on the bench, she had rarely witnessed such a blatant fraud. What Mr. Elijah Hawthorne endured wasn't merely an unfair divorce, it was legal robbery preying on the system. She let her words hang in the air. "This court completely nullifies the divorce. All marital properties, assets, and custody arrangements are voided. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into the original judge's potential corruption or negligence." With a decisive gavel strike, it was over. But this time, the sound represented justice served, not despair. Finally, leaving the courthouse, my dignity was restored, along with my possessions and name. I didn't let bitterness take over. I allowed the truth to prevail on its merits. The truth, as ever, is more powerful than any falsehood. That night, I returned to my modest apartment. Despite reclaiming my 3 houses, I chose to stay put. I wanted to relish this moment, remember the low point before bouncing back. That memory would serve as a humble reminder. Life changes swiftly, and it's who you are in private that truly counts. In the days that followed, I found myself juggling the finalizing of legal matters while stepping into a personal journey of recovery. The houses were officially transferred back to my name. Even though Camilla and Ethan were staying there, some legal tricks Robert pulled off meant the properties still belonged to me. As for the bank accounts, millions were spent, but the court ruled that whatever remained should return to me, along with compensation for everything I'd suffered. This wasn't about the cash. I still had my grandfather's untouched fortune quietly resting at $127 million. I felt no rush to disclose that account. Perhaps never would. I learned a crucial life lesson. Being visibly rich paints a target on your back, but wealth hidden in the shadows makes you untouchable. I moved back to my main house, the one with the stunning ocean view. Yet, something was off. What once filled me with pride now felt empty. The luxury furniture, art pieces, and marble floors appeared void of substance. There's a time when I lived in a tiny apartment and was just as happy, maybe even happier. I felt a wave of relief settling back into that apartment, finally released from past betrayals. I wanted to cleanse it, both physically and emotionally, so I hired a deep cleaning crew. Every trace of Camilla and Ethan needed to be erased. I discarded the furniture they used, gave the walls a new color, changed the locks, and sought to change the overall energy too. Once the cleaning was complete, it felt like an entirely new place, a perfect setting for a fresh start. Brianna and Marcus came over one Saturday afternoon. At first, things were awkward in the living room, a spot once lively with family dinners, silence hanging heavily among us. Brianna was the first to break it. "Dad," she started, I can't even begin to express how sorry I am." I stopped her right there, saying, "Start by being truthful with me and yourselves. Why on earth did you believe your mom's accusations against me?" Marcus lowered his gaze, clearly regretful. "Because it was easier to believe her than face the possibility that she'd been deceiving us all along. If she could lie about you, who knows what else was untrue? And that's frightening," he confessed, catching me off guard with his honesty. "And," Brianna added, voice trembling, "money was involved. Mom lured us with a share of the inheritance if we sided with her, and we fell for it." A heavy silence followed, the stark truth striking painfully. It hurt, knowing my own kids betrayed me for money. So I asked, "Now that you know everything, what do you feel?" Brianna's eyes welled up. "Awful. Like I threw away all you taught me about integrity. You paid for my education, supported my medical career, and I turned on you for cash I didn't even need." Marcus nodded in agreement. "Same here. Worst part is, you had our backs even when we didn't have yours. An investigator explained it all. You helped Brianna with her job issues. You invested in my business." I looked at them, imperfect, but stepping up to own their mistakes. "I forgive you," I told them, "but forgiveness doesn't reset things to how they were. Trust takes time to rebuild, maybe years. Are you ready to put in the work?" Through tear-soaked eyes, they both nodded. "Whatever it takes," Marcus promised. "For as long as it takes," Brianna echoed. And so began our slow path to family healing. It was neither quick nor easy. We navigated tough talks, awkward silences, and times when the old wounds resurfaced. But bit by bit, week after week, we discovered a new rhythm together. Meanwhile, the legal case against Camilla and Ethan trudged on. The district attorney had a strong case bolstered by testimonies from 8 earlier victims. The trial was a media spectacle. Ethan attempted to cut a deal, pleading guilty in exchange for leniency, but the DA wasn't having it. They wanted a full-fledged trial to serve as a lesson that justice can prevail over deceit. It spanned 3 weeks. I showed up every day, not in a spirit of revenge, but to find closure and witness justice in action. Camilla was a whole different person during the trial. The days of flashy makeup and designer clothes were long gone. Instead, she wore an orange prison uniform, shedding her previous image. At one point, our eyes locked while she was up on the stand. In that moment, I saw something real, honest regret. It wasn't the kind of show people put on to score a lighter sentence, but an actual understanding of how she'd wasted 35 years driven by greed and ambition. I broke the gaze, not out of anger, but because whatever feelings I'd had for her had disappeared. What really closed the door for me was indifference, not hatred. Ethan, on the other hand, didn't seem to feel any kind of remorse. He was cool, collected, even arrogant, thinking he'd outsmart the whole thing while people testified about how his actions wrecked their lives. But cleverness only goes so far if misused, and eventually, the justice system takes down those who think they can beat it. They didn't take long to reach a verdict. After just 4 hours of jury discussions on a rainy Friday, the jury returned, guilty on every charge. Ethan was handed a 20-year prison sentence, with no chance for parole for at least 10 years. Camilla was sentenced to 8 years for her role as an accomplice. When the sentence was announced, Ethan finally cracked. He shouted about the unfairness, bragged about who he knew, and swore it wasn't over. They had to drag him out as he tossed around empty threats. As I left the courthouse, I paused to inhale the fresh air. The rain had cleared and the sun was breaking through, a sign, perhaps. Robert met me at the courthouse steps. "Justice delivered," he said with a satisfied smile. "Justice delivered," I repeated. But deep down, I knew justice wasn't just about prison terms. It was about holding on to my principles even when everything seemed to fall apart. That was my true victory. With the criminal case over and my properties returned to me, I found myself thinking about the road ahead. What does a guy at 70 do with $127 million and a new beginning? I suppose I could have traveled the world, bought more properties, or indulged in luxury, but none of that called to me. Instead, I remembered something my grandfather had written in a letter. Use this money not for revenge, but to create a new life. I had taken care of the first part. Now it was time for the second. So, I decided to start a foundation. I named it the Frederick Hawthorne Foundation, honoring the man who foresaw my downfall and set the stage for my recovery all those years ago. Our mission was simple, yet ambitious: to assist people entangled in fraudulent divorces and bad legal practices by providing free legal aid to those who couldn't afford top-notch lawyers and building a support system for those betrayed by the system meant to safeguard them. I kicked off the foundation with a $20 million investment. I brought in top attorneys, investigators, and social workers, and we launched offices in 5 major cities. In our first year, we helped 43 people overturn fraudulent divorces or hold corrupt lawyers accountable. Every case we won was a small victory against ingrained injustice, and every person we helped reminded me why I survived: not to stack up wealth, but to use it as a force for real change. The foundation's success was beyond my wildest dreams. Stories of lives devastated by shady lawyers were not in short supply. We constantly received cries for help: mothers who lost their children to false claims, fathers financially ruined by cunning divorces, and elderly folks cheated out of their savings by dishonest guardians. Every story mirrored my experience and fueled my passion for our mission. I appointed Robert as the legal director for the foundation. He was ecstatic, mentioning that in his 30 years of practice he'd never had the chance to do so much good with such backing. Most victims of legal betrayal lose not just due to lack of evidence, but because they lack the means to fight, he noted. As we reviewed cases in his new office, he said, "This foundation levels the playing field, giving regular folks the same shot at justice that the wealthy have always enjoyed." One of the first stories we dived into was Gloria's. She was 62, and her tale was eerily similar to mine. Her husband teamed up with a female lawyer to take everything from her in the divorce: her house, her savings, even her little flower shop she ran for 20 years were gone. When she walked into our office, she looked beaten, like someone whose hope had been stomped out. But Robert and his team dug into her situation and discovered the same kind of dirty tactics Ethan used against me: fake paperwork, bought-off witnesses, and twisting the system to their favor. It took 6 months, but we came out on top. The divorce decision got flipped, her stuff was returned to her, and the shady lawyer was charged. When Gloria got the keys back to her shop, she showed up at the foundation with a bouquet of fresh flowers. Her eyes were filled with tears when she handed them to me. "Mr. Hawthorne, you didn't just give me my shop and my home back, you've given me my life back and shown me there are still good people out there." I teared up too. "Gloria, I only did for you what someone once did for me many years ago. Just paying it forward," I told her. And stories like Gloria's. Every time we won a case, it felt like our influence just kept getting bigger. More and more people were noticing what we were doing with the foundation. The media started writing about us, dubbing me the avenging angel for people who got the short end of the stick in divorces. Before I knew it, TV shows were inviting me for interviews. At first, I didn't like the idea of being in the spotlight. I wasn't doing this for fame. But then Robert, and he's sharp, said I should go for it. "Your story has power," he told me. "Share it, and you'll inspire others and maybe push the legal system to do better." Turns out, Robert was right. I agreed to appear on a major news show. The interviewer was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s. She threw a hardball at me, asking how I felt about Camilla and Ethan being jailed. I told her frankly, it wasn't about feeling happy they were locked up. I just felt relieved they couldn't hurt anyone else. It's a bit sad, honestly. Ethan had the talent to be a big-name lawyer, and Camilla, she could have been a really good partner. But they chose greed, and now they have to live with that choice. The interview really struck a chord with people. It blew up online. The support was overwhelming. People started sharing their own horror stories from divorces and congratulating me for staying level-headed. Some thought I should have been angrier, but here's the thing. I learned something crucial during that rough year. Bitterness? It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to drop dead. I wasn't going to do that to myself. The attention brought something unexpected. Letters, tons of them. People wanting to thank me, share their troubles, or even send money to help keep the foundation going. One letter especially got to me. An older lady in her 70s shared that she lost everything in a crooked divorce years back. Her handwriting was shaky, and she wrote, "I never got back on my feet, but knowing someone like you is fighting the good fight makes me feel like my pain wasn't for nothing." I made sure to write her back, thanking her and offering some help if she still needed it. Meanwhile, as the foundation blossomed, so did things with Brianna and Marcus. We took it slow, with weekly dinners and honest talks, rebuilding trust piece by piece. Marcus brought his wife, a wonderful woman not involved in the divorce ordeal, who treated me warmly without any past baggage. Brianna eventually introduced me to her boyfriend, a teacher who reminded me of myself back in the day, hard-working, honest, just a good guy. One Sunday night, after a pleasant dinner, Brianna asked me a big question. "Dad, during those rough times when you were alone, what kept you going?" I took a moment. It wasn't easy. There were days I just wanted to quit. But then I'd remember what my grandpa used to say. He would tell me, "The strongest trees grow in the harshest winds. Tough times can either break you or make you stronger." Marcus leaned in, listening closely. "So back then, you had no clue Grandpa had a stash hidden away, did you? You just kept pushing forward without knowing there was a lifeline out there?" someone asked. I gave a slight nod, confirming. "Exactly, that's it right there. You can't just pause and hope for miracles. You've got to push through, even when it seems like there's no end to the darkness. It's crazy how the help you need sometimes just pops up from places you'd least expect." Brianna's eyes started to shimmer with unshed tears. "Even after we let you down when you needed us most, you somehow found it in your heart to forgive. How did you manage to do that?" I drew in a long breath, letting it out slowly. "Thing is, forgiving isn't really a gift for you. It's a gift for me. Holding on to that anger would have torn me apart, way worse than anything Camilla or Ethan ever did to me. When I chose to forgive, I was letting myself go free. It allowed me to step forward without any chains holding me back." We sat quietly then, letting the silence piece us together. We were in the process of rebuilding, maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to start feeling like a family again. Not the old version, but possibly even stronger because of all we'd weathered together. As the foundation marked its first year, we threw quite the celebration. A gala, if you would believe it. Over 150 folks showed up, which was amazing, and it turned into a night to remember. There was Gloria, standing with her husband, after he saw sense and understood she'd only been caught up in legal manipulation. Nearby was a young father who got his kids back after we exposed his ex-wife's bogus abuse claims, and an elderly couple who at last reclaimed their savings from a crooked guardian. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the crowd gathered before me. Every face told a story of heartache transformed into hope. 2 years back, I began my speech. I found myself in a rundown apartment, convinced my life hit a dead end. I'd lost my family, my savings, and even my good name. All I had left was my integrity. I held on to that integrity like a lifeline in a sea of troubles. I paused, letting the significance settle with them. You see, integrity is really all you need because it pulls in the right kind of help. It attracts opportunities, and it seeks justice. And eventually, it even brings peace. Our foundation stands strong today thanks to my grandpa Frederick, who had the foresight to tuck away that seed 77 years ago. A seed that sat in silence until the exact moment it was needed. Now it's our turn to plant seeds. Every person we help, every case we win, and every life we touch plants a new seed. Seeds that will bloom and flourish beyond what we can even dream of. And that, I continued, my voice trembling with emotion, that's the real legacy. Not just wealth, but the lives we raise up. The room erupted in cheering, heartfelt, and thunderous. Everybody got on their feet. A few tears were shed, and many wore smiles, the sort that rekindles hope amidst despair. Once I stepped off the stage, Brianna and Marcus were there waiting. They wrapped me in tight hugs, something I hadn't experienced since their childhood. "We're so proud of you, Dad," whispered Brianna. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of wholeness. I'd lost everything, only to regain it. More importantly, I found something new and invaluable, a real purpose. The coming months brought a whirlwind of change. We launched branches of our foundation in 10 more cities, developed training for budding attorneys eager to right the wrongs of our legal system. A 24-hour support line for those in dire straits was set up. Plus, we started campaigning for new laws to curb shady legal practices. The work may have been tough, but man, was it fulfilling. Each morning when I woke up, I had a crystal clear reason for being. No longer was accumulating wealth my driving force. It was about creating something with a lasting impact. Then one day, a surprising letter arrived for me. It was from Camila. The words were written on standard prison stationery, shaky yet legible. "Eli," it started without embellishment. "I know I have no right to your time or your thoughts. I know that my past actions are beyond forgiveness, but I felt you needed to hear this. These 2 years I've spent in jail gave me lots of time to look inward, to see who I became and how I destroyed what was the best part of my life. Our marriage." Caught between curiosity and a cautious outlook, I read on. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, and I'm not expecting it. But what I have to say is, I'm sorry. Sorry for betraying you, for turning our kids against you, for squandering 35 years of love on a shallow affair." So, her letter kept on rolling. "I caught it on the news. Your foundation doing amazing things, helping folks like I should have, being there for victims instead of causing harm, and it's humbled me. But on the flip side, it's made me a tad proud. Because despite all I put you through, you're still the decent man you've always been. And it took me this long, staring my own mistakes in the face, to get what I lost when I let you slip away." She ended with a straight-up hope. "I wish for you the peace I never found. Camila." I gently folded the letter away. I wasn't mad or feeling some celebratory high, more like a mix of emotions. Sad about a life that could have been so different, but thankful she finally saw things clearly, even if it was a bit late. I decided not to write back, not out of spite or malice, just because there was nothing more to add. Some stories just end and more words won't change that. Yet, I kept the letter, not to brag or anything, but as a quiet little nudge reminding me that those who've hurt us real deep are still people, still able to regret, if only. Regret's got this knack for showing up fashionably late. That evening, I lost myself in thoughts in my study. It's the same room where I once found Camila on the phone, scheming with Ethan. Back then, everything seemed swathed in gloom, furniture and memories included. But I'd since swapped that heavy vibe for something lighter. Walls that once flaunted my business milestones now showcased the foundation's spirit. Smiling faces of those we've helped, eager new lawyers from our program, families reunited after far too long. I dug into my desk and fished out a letter from my granddad, Frederick, something I'd read more times than I can count. Each read revealed new wisdom slotted in between the lines. Bad men might swipe all they see, but what they can't see, they can't touch. That line made me grin. Granddad wasn't just talking about hidden cash. He was touching on inner grit, staying yourself even when life tries to beat you down. That was the true gold mine. My mind journeyed through the whirlwind of the last 3 years. The betrayal that shattered my world, the complete mess, and the unexpected discovery that helped me rise again. And it hit me. If I had the chance to stop all that from unraveling, would I? Surprisingly, even to myself, the answer was no. That pain turned a shallow success story into one with real depth and purpose. It taught me compassion that was missing from my once jaded life. The ordeal stripped everything away, showing me my real self. That insight was more valuable than any sum of money. Just then, Robert rang me up. "Eli, listen up. The governor just put his signature on that reform bill we pushed for. From now on, any divorce with assets over $1 million needs a judge's independent review, and any lawyer caught twisting the rules, the bar will step in automatically." This was a big deal, the fruit of years of hard graft, speaking up and pressing for transformation. "Robert, this is amazing news. How many lives do you reckon this law will save?" I asked. He paused, mulling over it. "Hard to say, but each life spared from what you faced is priceless." That night, I threw a small shindig at my place. Brianna, Marcus, their significant others, and key folks from the foundation came over. We all crammed into the kitchen together, a far cry from the old days when wealth kept us distant from such simple delights. No hired chefs, no staff, just laughter filling a space where it was once scarce. Brianna butchered the onions, and Marcus went head-to-head with a sauce that was a disaster, but it was a joyous mess. During dinner, I raised a glass. I wanted to nod to my granddad Frederick, who had the vision to plant seeds he'd never see sprout. To those who told their stories for the sake of others. To my kids, facing their flaws and seeking redemption. And to all of us, making the choice to be better every single day. The clinking of glasses resonated, one of those sounds that marks important times. Glancing around the table, I found true wealth, not in my $127 million, not in the assets or the finery, but in these bonds. Stronger now because they'd been tested. And once the guests headed out, I wandered onto the terrace overlooking the ocean. The moonlight laid out a silvery trail on the water. The salty breeze filled my lungs, refreshing and serene. At 73, my life had seen many twists and turns. I'd been a businessman, experienced betrayal in marriage, faced hard times, unexpectedly gained wealth, became a benefactor, and learned to forgive as a father. This journey taught me one vital truth. Time is on the side of those wronged, not by promising revenge, but by offering understanding. With time, you learn that anyone who betrays you first betrays themselves. They end up losing more than they could ever take. True triumph doesn't lie in their downfall, but in choosing to remain standing and refusing to adopt their ways. I recalled the last words my grandfather wrote to me. "Be the man I know you can be." A smile crept up as I finally understood what he meant. He wasn't asking me to be perfect. He wanted me to be complete. It was about getting up every morning. Every little misstep required forgiveness, even when it felt toughest. It meant transforming your pain into power to lift others, rather than letting it consume you. The ocean went on its perpetual rhythm. waves rolling towards the shore, then receding back, coming and going, persistent and steady, just like justice when it decides to appear, like love when it's true, like hope when clutched tight. I returned inside, shutting the door with a sense of peace, and laid down to rest. Because today, just like every day since I came across that old letter from 1948, I realized something important. My grandfather didn't just leave me some money. He left a lesson about patience, faith, and the belief that even in the darkest moments, seeds planted long ago will bloom when the time is right. And when these seeds finally bloom, they don't just rescue you, they have the power to rescue everyone you encounter after. That's the real miracle, not some hidden fortune, but the ability to transform your scariest experiences into your life's most profound purpose.